Hello everyone, and it's Crafty Carol here from Northern Ireland with another little project for you. And this project I've used the lovely bundle Everyday Arches. Everyday Arches comes with a stamp set, as you can see here, with all sorts of beautiful sentiments and things on it, and it also comes with a set of dies, which is why I bought it, these set of arch dies, which are just lovely. There are 10, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 dies, yes. Oh, I've written it at the top. There are 10 dies, and I'm using the first one, the third one, and the fourth one for this project. So they are just beautiful, and they cut out obviously you can see on the dies here, the detail, they cut out a sort of stitched shape around the arch. So I saw these and I thought, I've got to have these. But I also bought this set, which came out on an online exclusive, Arched Wishes, and it too matches the arch dies, but it's very much a birthday set, and I wanted to make birthday cards, so I've teamed this with my arch dies there. So let me show you the actual project. This is my first go at it. So it's an arched flip fold sort of card. It has an arched sort of front, then a second layer, and then a third layer where you can actually write your greeting. So this is the card. I'm going to make it slightly differently because I wasn't entirely happy with that one, and you need a fair number of bits. So the first one is you need a strip of A4, which is between 5 and 5.5. There's a little bit on that I need to just trim off there. Between 5 and 5.5 centimetres wide, or in inches, that's around 2 inches wide. So you want the strip of A4. For American cardstock, you want the full 11 inches by 2 inches. So strip of A4, 29.6 centimetres by 5 to 5.5. It doesn't really matter the width. That's not too bad. So you then want a piece which is 10.5 by, see that is nearly 14, I think, yeah. So about 14, which is roughly in inches, 5 inches by 4 inches you would get away with, because you want, that's for the largest arched die, and that one you use the largest die to cut out in the same cardstock. I've used Pretty in Pink here for this second card. This was made with Pool Party. Then with the second size down, you need to cut one in basic white and one in a DSP that matches your cardstock. And I've used this gorgeous paper, which is called, it's the Wildflower Birthday paper. And it is lovely. It's got lots of gold on it if you want to use those. So we've got this one, which I used in the first card with leaves on the back. You have this one, which I've used in this card, which I'm not using these gold foil leaves, but hey, sometimes you have to sacrifice gold foil. That's the sheet here. And there's this one, the sort of light blue with flowers, gold flowers all over it, and green on the back. That's another of those sheets. Then you have this one here, which has sort of Peach Party on the back. Another one there of that. And then there are these ones, which are sort of tabs and card fronts already made, and I did have already made cards with those before, which you'll see in my blog if you look back. There are also 2 sheets of push out flowers and things, which I might well use on this card. I haven't decided yet, but I might do. I wanted to use the balloons actually, and they're here. They're fallen out because I've already pushed them out. Just too big for that card. I'd need to stick it on the full-sized arch, which I didn't want to, so I haven't used those. Same with the flowers, I tried those. The cake I think does fit, so we could use a cake, we might do, or I might use this slice. We'll see how we make the card. So I've also got some Pretty in Pink ink to match this. I've got my Pretty in Pink, and I've got a light wild wheat just retired for the bottom of the cake if I decide to stamp the cake. A piece that I'm going to stamp the cake on, because this I stamped it direct onto the front arch, and I think actually I'd prefer to raise it up. So I also want the 4th size down arch cut out in basic white, and that is going to be for the inside for the sentiment. Now you could do that the same size as these. I decided a little bit smaller to give me a little more wiggle room for layering up these and getting them lined up correctly, and I also liked the board around that. Then we need a scrap for the sentiment with a slightly bigger scrap for a Pretty in Pink. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to use this whole thing or not, but this is a 10 centimetre bit, or 4 inches by 3/4 of an inch wide or 2 centimetres, depending on how you, if you want to use centimetres or whatever. But I wanted it to fit in one of my punches, the treasured tag punch, so that's why I've cut it 2 inches, 3/4 of an inch rather than 2 centimetres. And then a piece that is slightly bigger all round, I did it 2.4 actually, this was 2.4 centimetres, or just checking that out, just under an inch wide for this bit, and a little bit longer, 10.5 centimetres, or what's that, 4 1/4 inches, something like that. So those are the bits we need. I've also got a spare bit if I decide to do the different stamping on it. So let's go through how we make the card. So the first thing to do is we're going to score this long piece. So putting it in long piece at the top, we're going to score it at 4 centimetres using A4 paper. You're going to score it at 9.8. So that's 9 and then 8 of these little dots. The slightly bigger one is 5, so 6, 7, 8. It's 2 from the end. So we want to line the paper up there, making sure we're using the scoring blade and not the cutting blade. We're going to cut that. If you are working with 11-inch paper, you want to score it at 3 5/8 of an inch. And we're going to do that on both ends. It's easier to do it that way than open up the thing and do it. So we're doing it same at both ends, 9.8 centimetres, or for 11-inch paper, use 3 5/8 of an inch. Okay. So that gives us our basic card, and then we're just going to fold these over, one way, one the other. They don't fold exactly to the next crease, because that made the measurements a little bit fiddly in centimetres. Could spin it slightly if you wanted it to go exact. If it offends you, and I know a friend of mine who it would offend, and who would have to do the 0.5 centimetres to make it exact, but hey, I think that's sufficient. So you've got a piece that folds with 2 folds coming into the centre. Okay, so the next thing to stick in is our big piece, our big arch that we've cut from the arch dies. We're going to stick it in the middle, so it'll fit exactly between these 2 crease marks here, and just stick it in there. So we're going to stick it in. Now, sensible way to do it is you put the glue on this piece and not on the arch. So I'm just going to put glue around there. There we go. And then I can stick this on, and I'm going to line this arch up nice and neatly with the bottom of the cardstock so that it's exact across the bottom there. Okay, exactly between these 2 arms. So these arms will still fold in fine, and this sits on the back. Then the smallest, the one you've cut from the fourth die in on the set, that is going to be on here, but we're going to stamp it first. And I used, for this one, I'm going to probably do the same thing, I used the balloon, so I'm going to stamp that in Memento. This is the balloon from the Arched Wishes set. Make sure it's inked up, yep. I'm just going to stick that down one side like that. Oh, I've got a bit more glue on, never mind, I'll try and wipe that off in a minute. I don't know where that came from, there's nothing there for it to come off. Probably my finger looking at it. I will try and just rub that off with my sand rubber in a bit, but I'll try and do it now. These sand erasers I get from the wonderful Amazon. And when you have got a little bit of glue where you don't want it, just very gently just rub over where the ink is, and it will gradually come off. Don't go too hard because you will actually destroy the paper. But if you just rub it gently, you'll find that the ink will go. Takes a while. Hope you can see that that's basically got rid of those marks, yep. Okay, so little mistake there we didn't want. And I'm also going to stamp on there. There's this little stamp. It's actually a sort of sparkle for the top of the candle, but I rather liked it as a little decoration. And I actually am using this on the envelopes as well. If I can open my pretty ink pad. So we're just going to have a couple of those as little decoration, but still leave enough room for me to write a greeting inside there. Oh dear, very stiff that ink pad. And then I'm just going to use my light Pretty in Pink and my dark Pretty in Pink to just fill in the bloom to match my pictures. I actually feel it does dry slightly lighter, but I always feel when I'm using these ones, they're not actually the same colour as the ink. It's one of the ones that isn't quite the same, but it does actually dry a slightly different colour. So, and then the dark, just to give a little bit more shape to the balloon by putting it on one side. I'm imagining my light coming in this direction. So that will dry slightly lighter, as I say. And then I've actually got, this is, oh heavens, what do you call Wink of Stella? I'm really struggling with words today. Wink of Stella, but this is actually a gold Wink of Stella, which I've had for several years. And I'm just going to put some little gold dots in the middle of there, just because I like it. You could leave them blank, or you can just colour them pink, or you could do what you want. So there is my inside piece, which I can now stick in. So just putting glue on the back of there. And this one goes just right in the middle. So we're going to stick it so that it's got the same border all the way around, the same size border. I'm just eyeballing that. You could, if you wanted, set your dies out and mark around it if you really wanted to make it exact. So there is the back of my card. Then the next layer down, I'm using my DSP. So that very simply is just going to sit on here and cover that arch. See why I did it the size bigger, so I make it easy to cover the arch at the back. So it sits again with the same border all the way around of the Pretty in Pink. So this time I need to make sure I don't put glue above that bit there, which is the top of that flower. So I'm making sure I keep my glue below that line. And then, as I said, we have the same border all the way around, and we make sure that that lies directly across the arch we've just put on the back piece. So it covers it, okay? Like that, see? And for this piece, we are actually going to add some decoration to it, but it's really important for this piece, the second piece in, I want it to be flat. It needs to be flat. So I am going to use, I think I'll use there it is, that one's come out. I'm going to use that cupcake with the pink bottom, and this is where I'm going to put my happy birthday as well. So this is where I need these pieces and the happy birthday stamp from the Arch Swishes set. I'm going to stamp that in Pretty in Pink. So just ink it up. I'm stamping this in the centre, trying to get it nice and straight. There we go. Now for this one, I actually put those little splodges either side, but it made it quite big and it does mean it sticks out slightly. So I'm not going to do that with this one. I am just going to trim it by putting it through the punch, and I've used here the Treasured Tanks. I'm not sure if this one is still available or not, to be honest. I'm really not sure. And there's two different ends to it. There's this sort of pointy end or the round end. I'm going to use the round end, so I'm going to slide that in so that it's even. So I might actually just cut that down very slightly because it's slightly too big to go down the centre channels, and the more you can make it the same size as the centre channels, the better, because then it'll slide in easier. And I've got a bit of space at the top there, so I'm just going to put it over there, making sure it's lined up. So I'm putting it, as you can see, just over this centre guide here, and then I can hold it down flat and just cut a little bit off there. And that now will fit nicely into the centre of the channel here. So I'm going to push it right up, turn it over, make sure it's come right through. And here I can now line it up. I can sort of fiddle with it and make sure it's nice and straight against there, and just pinch off the end. And then we'll do the same with the other end, slide it all the way in, make sure it's nice and straight, punch the end. So we're just going to test that, because I might need to cut that down a little. Yes, I am going to cut it down even further, because that's still going to stick out. So this is on the hoof crafting. So I'll give you what measurements that needs to be actually. If I cut those ends off, and I've still got room to shape the ends. So I said 10 centimetres, actually you're better at, that's 8.8 or just under 9. So about 9 centimetres is actually better, or 3.5 inches if you're working in inches. So make this piece 3.5 inches. I will change the measurements I put in the blog so that it says that. So now I can shape those ends and I'll know it'll fit, which is nice. Just making sure it's right in the centre. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So I haven't got room to put my splodgy things on either side, but that now will fit across there. So even if I put my background on it, it's still going to be hidden. So I'm happy with that. So now I am going to stick this on here, and I can trim this down. So this second piece, I shall trim it down. Tell you what, I'm going to punch this first and then trim the other end. That'll work. So I'm using the same shaped punch. It'll be the slightly wider end now. So again, making sure it's right in the center where I want it to be. There we go. Then before I do the other end, I'm going to stick this piece on top, and I know it's going to be the right shape. So I'll then measure this and tell you what the other piece should be. It's not what I told you it was first time round. So I want to make sure that it's lined up. Got the same board, whoops, same board all the way around. There we go. So this piece would need to be 9.5 centimetres or 3 3/4 inches. I can't remember what I said. I think it was 3 3/4 inches, I think, anyway, for the narrower paper there. And then we can pop this bit in. And you'll notice I'm turning it upside down to punch, and that's because then I can check that I do have this all the way in where it should be, and I've got it even both sides. There. There we go. Oh, I just got a little piece just left on the edge of that, so I'm just going to trim that with my scissors. There we go. There. That's what I wanted. So it took a minute changing my measurements there, but then I can stick this across here, and if I just test it before I stick it down, make sure it's in the center there. And yes, it's just covered by that card, so that's perfect. Good. So I'm going to stick this down. There is a bit of bulk to this because it's a couple of layers, but I'm still going to stick it flat on here. Lining it up so I've covered the diamonds in the same way, just that bottom bit. Stick it on there. And it's covered up by that, which is perfect. So I'm then going to stick my little cake on top of there. My birthday cake, there we go. So that's 2 layers done. We just have to finish the front layer, which is this one. And for this layer, I'm actually using the one of the Everyday Arches one. I'm using the You Are Simply Fantastic. So again, you could choose which one you use, or you could use some other sentiment. It's totally up to you, but I'm going to use this one because I just really like it. You Are Simply Fantastic. And when I actually stuck it on the block, I placed it on my arch first. So I got the curve absolutely right. And then I picked it up on the block. So that's how I actually did it. And that ink again will dry in a slightly different way. I do find Pretty in Pink odd in terms of its ink and its colours, but can you see how that's dried lighter now? Much better matching. Yeah, something about Pretty in Pink, folks. Right, so that's finished with that. But I think I'm going to use, shall I use this or shall I use some, might use that. Stamp that on here and then cut it out because this was too flat. I think I wanted to do it differently. But I might use a piece of cake, actually. I might use this piece of cake a little bit. There's a lovely pink bloom there, look. Could use that. Oh, look at that. I like that. Let's get around. Obviously, there isn't enough for my whole class here. They are going to have to do some stamping rather than cut it all out. Quite like that. So, do we use the cake or do we lose the bloom? Oh, now. That's a good question. I think I'll use the cake. I quite like the cake. I like the balloon as well. I didn't need to stamp my one inside. I could have used that one. Never mind. I stamped that inside. So I think we'll use the cake actually. And that means I can put this directly up. But I'm going to add a little bit to it because I actually quite like the idea of having this perhaps around the top of the cake. So if I use my pencil and just mark roughly where I want to put the top of the candle, then let me just clean that stamp because it had pink on it still. I'm going to use, my Delecta Gold ink pad and just put some of these round. If that is not, yeah, I think that's okay. So we'll have, just put a few of these around. Oh, it's very, very light, this pad. I think it's run out. Well, it doesn't matter because I'm going to put those on. And then, if you're using these gold and silver ink pads, by the way, clean your stamps immediately before it dries. I think actually they're running out. I don't know. Must see if I can get some ink for those somewhere, some ink refills. But I've got that outline, but I have got my gold pen here. So what I'm going to do is just go over the lines with the gold Wink of Stella, which will give me some glitter. I could have embossed it. That's the other thing to do. I could have just used my Versamark and then embossed it with gold. That would have looked nice. I'm not going to fill in the middles this time. I'm just going to leave it like this. And one more there. There. If you can see the glimmer in that, but there's a lot of glitter in that, which I really like. So I am going to gently rub out my pencil marks there. And then I'm going to stick this on with some dimensionals. I'm going to put a little tiny one on the top of the handle, and then use my bigger ones for the rest of it. So I avoided the stamping there, but as I said, I could stamp the cake on this sheet and then cut it out. That's the other option. Ooh. There we go. So sometimes these cutouts are really good. You could use, obviously the kits have some of those. There's some nice ones in some of the scrapbooking packs. Have a look through the catalogue because you will see those. And I'm not happy with the stamping of that. So what I'm going to do is grab my Stampin' Right marker because I'm really not happy with that. I don't know why it hasn't fully inked. So I'm just going to go over the bits that haven't really inked up properly with my Stampin' Right marker. So a little tip, if you've got a problem with a stamp that doesn't seem to stamp terribly well, use some Versamark on it before you put it in the ink. And I think I might do that with this stamp next time because I'm not quite happy with that. Stamp the rest of it okay there. So that just fills it in. Again, there's always a way around things, folks. And then we need to stick this one on top. And this time we need to be quite careful. So when we stick it down that we are going to match it up exactly to the one underneath. So again, I only want to put glue on the bottom piece here. So I'm using Tombow because I definitely need wriggle room for this. So I'm going to shut the card, make sure it's lined up properly. Fold exact there. And then I'm going to line it up with the arch, second arch down. Make sure that is even. There we go. Over that way a little bit. I love the wiggle room of the Tombow. There we go. So there is my card. So simply fantastic, happy birthday, and a space for me to write my message. So those are my two cards. They do stand up, and because obviously we've got the base that we put those on, they will stand up like that, so you can see all the bits of the card, or you could stand them up just as one open like that, or however you really wanted to do it. So I hope you like this little project. I quite liked putting it together. It's just a slightly different one, but I did want to use these arch dies and show how you can layer them and make some really quite fun cards. Thank you for joining me today. All of the instructions and the correct measurements will be on the blog. That is at craftycarolscards.co.uk, and I will see you again soon, I hope. Bye for now.